everybody. Ben Nelson, the everyday real estate investor here. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the podcast. I am going to talk today about something that I wasn't planning on talking about, and that's kind of the point. Because today I'm going to talk about learning to adapt, and the reason is because I had to adapt today, so it's kind of top of mind, and so we're going to chat about it because it's a super important thing to be aware of and to be able to be good at. And so we're going to talk about it today. We'll talk about why it's necessary and hopefully give you a few ways to be able to do that. And I'm going to start off with a quote just to kind of set the stage, I guess. And this is from Darwin. And whether or not you agree with the thought behind it, the purpose of the quote, the evolutionary theory behind that. The quote is nonetheless a very applicable quote in our lives and in the business world and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and read it here. I think this applies and I think you'll see why. So the quote is, and I'm sure you've probably heard this, a lot of you have heard this before, but it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. I'm going to read that again. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. And I think that that quote is so true in again, whether it's in the, you believe in the theory of evolution or not, I don't know, whatever your worldview is on that, within what we see on a normal basis of our lives and business and things like that, you can absolutely say that that is true in that sense, that you can see people that are highly intelligent that are not able to adapt to what is going on in their life, in the economy, things like that. And so they are less successful than maybe people that are not quite as smart, but or not quite as strong or whatever. And but they're much more able to adapt to what's going on. So I just thought that was a very important quote. It sets the kind of the groundwork of why we're talking about this, because it is so important. It is that important because uh, it is the foundation of success in a lot of ways. And yes, you can be successful without being able to adapt. But you're going to be very limited, and you're going to set yourself up in spots where you might get stuck because you're not able to adapt. So let's dive into it here a little bit. So you have a lot of things out there that talk about routines and things like that, and I totally agree with that. But the problem is when you get stuck in that and you have no flexibility, we have no ability to adapt, because you know we're in times of change. People talk about times of change. Times are changing right now, right? There's a lot going on in the world. There's so many new technologies, lots of things happening, the economy, things like that. And so times are changing. You have to be able to adapt. But the truth is, things are always changing. They're always going to be changing. They always have changed. There's always things that are going on that you have to be able to adapt to. So going back to routine, um, you know, routine is good, and you want to have routine to some degree, but especially if you're an entrepreneur, you you have to be able to be flexible and adaptable within your day, within your week, because there are things that are going to come up that you just cannot anticipate. So life has changed. Life There's things that happen, life events, family circumstances. You have months or even years that don't go as planned. And if you're so set in your, this is how this is supposed to look, you're gonna find yourself in a spot where you're depressed, or you're disappointed in what's happening in your life. You're not able to figure out a way to get through that or around that, because you're just so stuck in, this is how things are supposed to look, and this is how my day is supposed to look, this is how my business is supposed to look. um, you have to be able to make those adjustments and flex. Everybody, if you've listened to my podcast at all this year, I don't mention it every episode, but um, my life completely changed at the beginning of this year. We had a very unfortunate life circumstance and lost a very close family member. And, and he was very involved. Our businesses dovetailed We weren't in business together per se, but we worked together. He was a builder, and I was the agent. And so, um, you know, not only in a family dynamic and losing someone close, but in a business perspective, my business and my life completely changed. And it doesn't mean it's easy. Absolutely not. But my year has not been how I planned it to be. I'll just tell you that. Right. And there's more that I could go into there that has come up in my personal life. And you have to figure out how to adapt, and you have to be okay with things not going the way that you plan them. And again, not okay in the sense that it's like, oh well, things just happen. You grieve and you go through those things, um but you have to be able to get to the other side of that, in the sense of, you got to figure out, okay, now what do I do? Right? Do I bury my head in the sand, and do I just give up, or do I figure out a way to continue forward in my business? I'm going to have to pivot. I'm going to have to do things differently than I did. Our family life looks different, right? So we're adapting in that. And it's not easy, like I said, but you have to figure out how to do that. If you can't adapt, then you're going to struggle. Your results are going to suffer, and you're going to be just constantly in this state of just not being um, satisfied with where you're at and where you're going, because you're just so stuck in what it is that you thought it was supposed to be. So we just don't know, like, what life is going to throw at us and when, and so you have to be able to adapt when those things come. Markets change, right? Markets. We saw a big market change very quickly, right? We saw the first half of last year was crazy, low interest rates, bidding wars, all of that stuff. And then we hit the second half of the year, and it was like someone hit the brakes, right? Rates had gone up so quickly, and so much over such a short time. People got a little bit afraid. They weren't sure what was going to happen in the market, and so the brakes, got hit. People were getting sticker shock on their payments, right? Because now we're not at 3% anymore. We're at 6%, 7%. Huge difference in payments. So it's the sticker shock and just kind of the unknown shifted the market. And then here we go. We hit the beginning of 2023, and we are right back in the heat of the market being just kind of crazy again. Um, and I know every market is different. That's what it's like here. I think a lot of markets around the country are like that. There's always exceptions. Every market reacts a little differently, but the point is, we very quickly went from a hot seller market to kind of a buyer's market for a while, and back to a seller's market, but more of an equilibrium market. So if you can't adapt in your business to what the market is doing, you're gonna struggle. And not that you can always see all those things coming. You should be looking at trends and looking ahead and things like that. But if you are limited in your strategy, if you're limited in your knowledge of how to structure deals, how to go about this business, how to find leads, how to do structure any of that stuff with deals and putting deals together, talking to sellers. If you're a one trick pony, right? And you only got one way to do it. It's going to be really tough for you when you hit a market that has different conditions, right? You want to have lots of tools in your tool belt, lots of ways you can go about negotiating deals, working with sellers, finding opportunity, finding buyers and sellers, helping, if you're an agent, helping buyers buy when they're in a market that is, hey, it's not 3% anymore, it's 7. How do you convince, or not convince? I don't like that word, because I feel like it insinuates that you're making someone do something they're not really wanting to do. So, but how do you show someone it makes sense to buy now, when last year sure would have been easier in the sense of payments, right? Of the sense of how much it's going to cost them. So it was not, you didn't have to do that last year. Like, it's, you had to help them get in a house. They're 1 of 10 offers, but you didn't have to convince them. That you didn't have to show them. Is like, they understood it. Rates are low. I can get a new, rents are going up. It makes a lot of sense to buy a house right now. Now it's a little bit harder. You gotta really show them the benefits. So if you can't do that, if you were selling homes just because interest rates were low, you're probably struggling right now. So That's what I'm talking about. You have to hone your skills and be able to find ways to continue forward with your business even when things are changing. And again, those tools in the tool belt, negotiation skills, knowledge of just being able to show people why things make sense, deal structuring, all of those things are super super important. um, and I'd say the same thing with goals. I talked about this before. I feel like I've done this in my own life where you set goals. I'm totally a proponent of setting goals. I think that's a great thing to do. I write my goals down, I review my goals, and I track and all of that stuff. uh, but I think where some people find error, and I know where I have, is that we forget that life and the economy and opportunity and all of these things are dynamic, right? We don't know necessarily. You can hone in on a certain type of clientele, but you don't necessarily know what opportunity is going to come your way, because you don't know the timing of people. You don't know who's going to call you, right? So you can target certain people, but if you're like, hey, I need to buy something that's seller financing and I need to buy it with you know less than 5% down. Okay, there's people out there that are willing to do that. You can sure hone in and target that. But if that's your only way that you can buy a property, you are going to probably be looking for a long time. So you have to have more flexibility than that. So and again, with your goals, right? If you say you want to flip X number of properties and buy X number of whole properties, well, that's great. It's great to have a target, but what if every property that comes your way, what if none of them are worth holding? Well, if your goal is to buy 4 hold properties this year and you're just holding something because it's your goal, and it really doesn't make sense to hold it, it makes more sense to wholesale it or to flip it. That's dumb. Don't do that just because it's your goal, right? So again, adapting, right? You're hey, that's a great to have that goal to hold, but don't let the goal, don't put that before what the opportunity actually is, right? You don't let they say don't let um, the tail wag the dog or whatever, right? You're doing that with your goals then at that point. So um, have goals, target the right things to be able to hit those goals, but also be adaptable and know that things are dynamic. And that's how you miss opportunity too. You're talking to a seller and like, hey, I got to buy a hold property. I got to structure this in a way that works for a hold. Well, it's not working. This is not going to come together, and you totally miss an opportunity where you could have structured it a different way. And yeah, you wouldn't have been able to hold it. Uh, but now you can wholesale it or you can flip it, right? So don't be so blinded by uh, this perception of what your goals are that you're missing opportunities to do something else. Another thing to be aware of, I mean, we know, I mentioned times are always changing, but right now technology is changing so quickly. And, all this with AI, and I'm not the expert on AI. I've dabbled a little bit in some of the AI, but it's going to change a lot of how we do business. And it's going to be interesting to see how that all comes to fruition. It's still very early in a lot of that stuff. But the point is if you're not able to adapt to some of this new technology, you are going to be left behind, and people are going to adapt it to it and adopt it. And so if you don't, and you can't figure out how to adapt to how this is going to fit in our economy and our society, then you're going to be left behind, and other people are going to benefit. You're going to be left in the dust, and you don't want that. So you have to figure out how these changing times, changing technology, where the trends are headed, how to adapt to that. Um, the other thing that I wanted to kind of point out is that um, being able to adapt can actually mean new opportunity. It can actually create opportunity. So we've got a property right now that we are adapting to new zoning code, which is great. It is creating new opportunity in our market, and it is creating new opportunity with a specific property that we own that we were not able to partition before, but potentially could partition now and create some more value and create a separate property where we can have maybe some more inventory on the market. So that's an example of adapting, right? There's things changing all the time, and so you have to be aware of these things and where can you adapt. And we're also looking at more opportunities, um, that creates within the market for some development, some new development that were not available before. And if you're so stuck, and we see this all the time with builders in the area, and I get it, you're a production builder, or what works, or you're just about the bottom line, whatever, no judgment, just saying, people, a lot of builders get stuck in this model where this is what we do. We're not going to do anything different just because we don't want to, or we just don't, it's just not in our wheelhouse, or whatever the decision behind that is. And so these new zoning laws and legislation is great. It's created for middle housing and creating some more affordable housing. But the problem is people have to actually do it, right? And so you have all these builders that aren't willing to adapt and do these things. And so we need people that are willing to adapt and are able to adapt, and are able to kind of think outside the box and say, hey, this is now what we can do, and finding ways to make that work, and create the new opportunity that's outside of what people that are not willing to adapt are able to do. So um, again, adapting can mean a new strategy. We talked about that with it can mean new opportunities. It can mean a new business model. It can mean changing markets. If a market's not working, right, you maybe have to adapt and move to a different market. You may not adapt on your change your strategy. You may just change your market. That's valid too, right? So it's still you're still adapting. You're still making a shift to make your business model work, but you don't have to necessarily shift your strategy. You just have to make sure you're shifting to a market that will fit with your strategy, right? Because we've talked about this before. You don't start with the market. You don't start with a specific property or market. You start with your strategy, and then from there you figure out which market works. Because if you're doing it the other way, you're doing it backwards, because you may have a market that you're trying to buy in, and you may have a goal that you want to achieve in investing, and that market may not be able to deliver that goal. So very important to be looking at that. So change isn't bad. Change isn't bad. People look at change. People look at things that are happening in the economy. It's not a bad thing. If you're looking at it as a bad thing, you're looking at it the wrong way. Change creates opportunity. There's always opportunity with change. You just have to figure out where it's at. And again, you have to be flexible, and you have to learn how to shift what you're doing now to make it match with what's going on, to take advantage of that opportunity. And I listen to the Real Estate Guys radio a lot, and they talk about being agnostic with politics, right? I'm sure they have an opinion, but they don't put it out there on their show. But their point when they talk about politics is that it really doesn't matter what you think. It matters where things are going, and then you position yourself to take advantage of where the trends are and where things are headed. And that's exactly what adapting and learning how to adapt is all about, is where is that going, where are things going, where are the trends, and putting yourself in a position to take advantage of that. And if you're not flexible, if you're too stringent on what you're doing, you're not going to be able to do that. So how do you adapt? How do you do that? If you're stuck, if you're stubborn, if you're just wanting to, if it's just a challenge for you to do that, the first thing I want you to do, so you have to give yourself permission to not be so stringent. There's so much advice out there, so many books, again, all about routine and structuring your day and time blocking. And I'm not saying any of those things are bad. They're good, but only to a point. You have to have a little bit of room to, if someone calls me and it's like, hey, I want to list my property. I need, can you come out and meet with me today? And I'm like, you know what? Shoot. Well, I have time blocked out to, do my reading. So I'm staying up on time. I don't know. I'm just coming up with something on the spot, something that you can change. Right. But it's like, nope, it's scheduled in my schedule. That's done. You're missing opportunity. Right. So, you can't let other people dictate your day to a certain point, but you also have to be able to be willing to, put things to the side that they're like, you know what, I had a time block here for this, but this is a more important task. I need to shift to this, right? Someone calls you, hey, I've got a property. Thanks for sending me a letter. I have a property that I need to sell. I really, I would love to meet with you. I am in a hurry to sell, and this is a good opportunity. If you're not prioritizing that just because you have a certain structure of your day, you got to reorder your day. You got to adapt to those opportunities. You don't know when they're going to come, and so you have to be prepared to jump on them. And again, if you're too stringent, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to think that that's the wrong thing to do. I'm telling you, it's probably the right thing to do. So give yourself permission to not be so stringent. Give yourself permission to get outside of your, change your schedule, change your time block for the day, if you have to, if that's what it takes to do it. Have structure. Don't hear what I'm not saying. Have structure. Have some systems set up, things like that. But be willing to change that if necessary from time to time. No, it's okay, even necessary to change, right? That's a no-brainer. We talked about that earlier. You have to be willing to change. If you don't, you're going to be left behind because everybody else is going to change, and you're going to be the only one that's doing things the same, right? If you're still, if you're still using old technology, or you're printing off listings to send them over to your buyers, or, things like that. And there's still, sometimes, again, you have to adapt to people that's how they work, right? If you're working with older people that don't maybe even have email, there's still people that don't have email, right? Like, oh, I only send out e-signatures. Well, you have to adapt to that too, right? So, but yeah, overall, you have to be ready to change, because things are changing. And if you don't change with it, then you're going to be left behind. Look ahead at what's coming and make sure you're prepared. That's how you can adapt, right? If you don't want to be blindsided by something that you didn't see coming. So market trends, technology trends, all of those things, what's the economy doing? That way you can strategize, you can prepare, and you can be ready to make those changes and adapt as necessary. Always be learning. Again, stay on top of new trends, technology, things like that. If you are not learning on a daily basis, if you don't think you have anything else to learn, you're wrong. There's always things to learn, especially in times of change, which again is always. So hopefully those are some helpful tips. Again, be structured, have systems and processes and time blocks and things set up, but don't have it be so stringent that you can't adapt your day, your week, your month, your year. Don't let those things throw you off. If you're so stringent and something comes up to throw off your day, you're going to be reeling, and you don't want that. So build out the ability to be flexible, have some flex space in your time blocks, right? Set time blocks up, but don't completely block out your day. Give yourself the ability to adapt and shift. I'm going to end with just a couple more quotes here, because again, people understand adapting is super important. So we started with the one from Darwin. The one that's most adaptable to change is the one that survives, right? This one is great. The most successful people are those who accept and adapt to constant change. This adaptability requires a degree of flexibility and humility most people can't manage. It's a great one. Action and adaptability create opportunity. I think I mentioned that earlier, right? Adaptability is a simple secret of survival. And I'm going to leave you with this one. All failure is the failure to adapt. I'm going to read that again. All failure is the failure to adapt. All success is successful adaptation. So make sure you're able to adapt. Find success by successfully adapting to the trends, to where things are going. Make changes in your business. Be able to adapt throughout your day and your week. So I'll leave you with that. I wish you the best success out there. Be flexible, be willing to adapt, and you will continue to find success.